So I'll get started just to be informal. Um, so, so Adam, let me ask you quick intro, maybe quick 30-second intro on what you do. What were you doing before you got to McKesson and Change, and why you think what you do is important?
Yes. My name is Adam Sullivan, and I'm the senior director of the artificial intelligence group at Change Healthcare. The Change Healthcare, the kind of the bread and butter of Change Healthcare is we serve as we're one of the groups that in healthcare that we've probably worked with you, but you probably don't know it. Whenever you submit a claim or an insurance adjustment or anything like that, it comes through our network. And we handle all the intermediaries between the hospitals and the providers. We've got a large data set, a large team at Change Healthcare doing artificial intelligence and machine learning. Before this, I have a PhD in biomedical engineering from the University of Tennessee. Before this, I worked at a medical device company called Zoll, where we did use machine learning for a whole slew of things around EKGs.
Thank you, Adam. So Taposh, I've known Kaiser for a long time. They're one of the change makers, as I call them. I don't know if many of you knew that Epic, the medical records platform, was one of the early venture projects for what are called the Big Five medical records companies, or Big Five healthcare systems. Woranat, come on, join the stage. So Woranat is from Sanofi, which is a life sciences company. It's a pharma company. But back to Taposh. So I've actually known Kaiser for a while. I worked on Epic for a little while many years ago. And Kaiser was one of the 5 large organizations that funded Epic, by the way. If I'll remember all their names, Mayo Clinic, Geisinger, Group Health, which is now Kaiser as well, and Kaiser Permanente. I always forget the 5th one, but I'll remember it sometime. So when did you come on board Kaiser, and when did they actually form this team? Great work, by the way.
Sure. I came on board in October of 2014, and I formed my innovation team, which is part of decision support with a business unit for program-wide. Since then, we have been playing along. We have been doing a lot of initiatives in the big data area and in the machine learning space. And H2 has been a partner since beginning with us.
Do you have direct visibility to the management team? How does the funding work for interesting projects?
I have some visibility with the management team, and the funding is a little complicated. You have to talk to different stakeholders. You have to negotiate with them. You have to show the value there. And sometimes the value is in the care and the betterment of the organization, and we being one of the ACOs, always are focused for the betterment.
So ACOs, for the guys who don't know the acronym, is Accountable Care Organization. They're both a payer and a provider, so they both provide the care and they actually pay for it as well. So Taposh, before Kaiser, what did you do?
Okay, I did a lot of things before Kaiser. Just joining before Kaiser, I used to work for a couple of startups. I have a background in machine learning and AI. I worked in finance and then in advertising. And my area of research in the graduate school was simulating solid-state device using cellular Monte Carlo theorem. So I have done a lot of things, and lately I felt my heart was in healthcare. And so that's the main reason for the transition.
Thank you, Taposh. Moving on to Woranat. So we met in New Jersey recently. So Woranat was quite surprised that the author of data.table in R is part of H2O. I don't know if Matt Dowell is here in the audience, but anyway, that was a very interesting side chat we had, that there's a very deep set of folks inside H2O. Woranat, what is your background and what do you do at Sanofi?
My background is actually in engineering, but right now I'm working more on the data science. So our team actually works mostly in the finance data, sales and those stuff, but we also work on the claims data as well. So some project like rare disease, patient finder, stuff like that. So
So you're
But-
basically trying to stratify patients for
Right.
your drug portfolio.
Right, right.
Is it for research only, or is it post-research for post-market selling?
It's, I think probably Kaiser know better than me. So in terms of the company, in the rare disease space, it's, how can I say? Okay, let's not go into
Okay,
that.
that's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. No worries. No worries. By the way, they had to talk to their legal teams to tell me what they could and cannot say, but that's all right. I mean, that's part of the game here. We'll wait for Somalee. Somalee is finishing her session, but we'll keep going in the interest of time. My next question to each of you. By the way, a very varied set of backgrounds, and that's the magic sauce, I guess, is. Have a lot of interoperable teams that come from very different backgrounds because the innovation from one industry always passes on to the other industry. And you heard Arno's story about him being a particle physicist. So let's start with Adam. How big is your data science team? I know McKesson, now Change, is a very large organization. Across the organization, how big is your data science team?
Yeah, so just to clarify, just a part of McKesson, their technology part.
The
merged with
consumable
Change
part is still
Healthcare,
called
right?
McKesson.
Yeah, I didn't want to claim that McKesson is now Change Healthcare.
No.
But so within Change Healthcare, we kind of have a center of excellence model of data scientists. We've got about 20. We're expanding pretty rapidly, both in classical machine learning and deep learning, to try to basically double, both in terms of people and the number of projects that we're working on. Probably about 6 of those represent software engineering, data engineering, architecture, and most data scientists are DevOps data scientists.
Taposh?
So Kaiser is
also a very large
it's a
organization.
very large organization. I mean, we have 200,000 plus employees. We have a couple of research centers. Overall, according to some estimates, it's 5,000 plus people who do data analytics in that space. So that's the overall strength of research and analytics. My team is fairly small, actually. We have a couple of PhD scientists in machine learning and reinforcement learning. We have a couple of statisticians, epidemiologists, and a UI UX developer. So we have a well-rounded team in that sense.
How many physicians do data science in Kaiser? Any?
So
0? 1, 10?
you'll be surprised. Some physicians are very analytical and very data oriented, and you'll be surprised that they can talk knowledgeably and they understand exactly how data works.
I'm a medical school dropout, and what we learned in first year was basically decision trees. It's called differential diagnosis, which is actually very, very similar to decision trees. So I guess they're trained in a certain way. Thank you. So Sanofi is also a very, very large organization. Multiple different footprints, Sanofi Genzyme, Sanofi Pasteur, Sanofi on its own. Do you actually interact with the other Sanofi footprints at all?
Okay, let's say that we have like a lot of brands. Each brand will have their own
teams?
Teams, yes. So, but again, sometimes you need the other team to kind of validate what you've done. So our team is one of those teams. So I can say for my team, it's about like 20 or so people with all PhD. And then for the other brands teams, they will have some other team building the models, and then we kind of collaborate together to see what will be the best for each work. I mean, for the models or forecasting model, predictive model, whatsoever.
So geographically, let's stay with Woranat.
Okay.
Geographically, how many data science footprints across the world? More than 10 cities? Less than 10 cities, just approximately?
I can't say for sure. I mean, yeah. Because
Okay.
for Sanofi, we have several locations in New Jersey, also in Boston.
I actually know for a fact that they have a they have a footprint in Frankfurt, in Spain, in Chilly-Mazarin and near Paris. So, and then one in New Jersey and probably one, nothing in California. I think Boston is one,
Boston,
right?
right.
So Cambridge, Mass. is
Right.
another one. So at least 5 that I know
And
of.
China right
Shanghai,
now.
that's right. Yeah.
It's very
So-
big right now. We focus a lot on there.
So it is global.
Right.
So Adam, what's the footprint look like geographically?
So our team is based entirely in Emeryville. We're right at the foot of the Bay Bridge. But geographically, our company is, I think, over 100 offices across the United States. We do have some international as well, Vancouver and
Vancouver's the imaging footprint. right?
imaging, right, and for Change Healthcare. And but all of our data scientists are based in Emeryville, and we've got a data engineer and an architect that work remotely out of Oregon and New Jersey.
And you mentioned data lake, so we could kind of deviate a little bit into that and
Love to talk about the
the
data lake.
infrastructure. And so you mentioned you had one data lake, so that's actually a very interesting thing from a corporate strategy perspective.
We do. In the within our corporate strategy, the data lake is driven by AI solutions. In terms of prioritization of who's going into the data lake, our AI team is developing out what is the strategy of onboarding different organizations within our conglomerate of Change Healthcare that belong into the data lake, at which velocity we get those in dedicating resources to that. So from an overall strategy, we have the support to, one, have a data lake, have the governance around it, and then populating the data lake, because what good's a data lake that doesn't have any data in it?
And was it the Hadoop strategy, the HDFS strategy was for data movement per se, or was that actually for analytics as well?
It's a little bit of both. There are some components of so using we're all Amazon based. One for housing of a claims repository in some sense on one hand, but then additionally for the purposes for analytical reasons to have a data lake. Bring your compute power to the data, do your thing, and jump off.
Taposh, the story with Kaiser is slightly different. It's a healthcare organization, so everything resides within the 4 walls. Do you have to actually look at, are you looking at the cloud, number one? And number two, if you have to move stuff that already resides within the 200 plus footprints that Kaiser owns, how are you thinking of strategy for the future? What do you have now and what are you thinking?
So
whatever you can say publicly. So. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, what we have now is, as you know, we are an integrated healthcare organization, and we have a lot of data. We have been collecting data since the beginning. So that said, we take data very seriously, and the strategy to go to cloud or not is something that our leaders are still thinking about it, and I cannot comment more on that.
And so what does your data lake look like now? I mean, do you have one for just the structured data, one for the unstructured data?
So we have a data lake right now, which is 100 nodes around about, and it's HDFS based. Currently, we have structured data there. We have some semi-structured data as well, but that's our main ETL that my team uses.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Woranat, how do you get your data from? Do you actually buy claims data sets, or you actually curate your own?
There's a part that, as a whole company, we buy the data.
Okay.
And then within the company, depends on the team, which team can access to that data. So I talked to you before that we kind of have a lot of data lake. That's because each team has different permission, right? So it is easy in that way. Like if my team works only with sales and claims data, then we have our own data lake for that. So everyone in the team can quickly jump into and work on that. But I don't know for sure how many or how much.
It's a big company. So right. What I learned in distributed systems was that if you look at data lakes, what's called the AIM method is very important. So access control, authorization, audits and logs, and then identity management. So identity management is actually very, very hard in healthcare, about 15% of data sets are duplicated. So you have patient names that are across multiple reports and multiple processes and so on. Can you talk a little bit about your ETL strategy? You know, what kind of
Sure.
tool sets do you have
So-
other than H2O?
My team in general works mainly with big data tools. By that I mean the HDFS platform. Generally we set up our workflows in terms of Impala, OZ jobs. We have Spark workflows as well. And then we use any UI capability either through Python Bouquet or Shiny or to Tableau infrastructure to show our results out.
So you talked about Impala, which actually implies to me that you actually write SQL queries still to extract data and then do that stuff, or?
Some of our old stuff is done
data
in Impala.
warehouses.
Data warehouse stuff is that we got the data is in Impala.
And can you elaborate a little bit, Adam, on you actually mentioned, I did see Google Cloud as well, which I wanted to ask you about.
Oh.
So
So for us, our main strategy for ETL within our artificial intelligence group focuses mainly around Spark, using Spark jobs, data pipelines to be able to take stuff from on-premise databases if they exist there, getting them into our data lake, and then from there, whatever our modeling and scoring pipelines look like, generally those are going to be in Spark jobs, PySpark or Scala-based. And then generally we're iterating on, train, test, score, evaluate a model, and then sending the results back through data pipeline or some kind of Lambda execution for returning the results back into a workflow.
So Spark, that actually triggers large memory instances to me. So how are you actually letting Amazon do all the heavy lifting in terms of building large memory instances? And
Right, yeah, no, completely. Both in terms of our ETL pipelines, in terms of whether we're joining or whatever else we need to do, but also using H2O to leverage the Spark backend so that we can have gigabytes or terabytes of memory distributed across the cluster for us. We don't have to do anything except launch an H2O,
you saw
launch a Spark cluster.
Arno's roadmap that we're going to be having Spark as the kind of the backend before H2O comes in as a single
right.
instance. So
Yeah,
I think
no,
we're thinking about this as well.
Yeah. And H2 recently, I think Amazon last week announced that
Yep.
their EMR can now sit on some of their deep learning architecture. So there's a lot of possibilities.
Woranat, do you look at the data engineering piece, or do you actually only work with the data once it comes outside some data engineering part? Do you write SQL queries, or do you actually do data cleanup?
Yeah, we did. Actually, we used to have to write the SQL, but right now, if you use R a lot, there's a package called dplyr.
Yeah.
So you can just write.
Checking if Aaron's
Yeah, it
here
should be
still.
with table, data table also. So you just write the code on dplyr. It works beautifully in server. Then once you're done, just pull the small data back.
Any of you using graph DBs at all?
The graph theory.
Oh, you can answer that if you want.
Yeah, we
It's the hottest thing right now, but I just wanted to ask that.
we touch on that, but it's somewhat hard for other people to understand. So it's probably is not time.
Maybe
for,
not all workflows are built for graphs,
Right,
correct? So,
right.
any comments, Taposh?
No, I think you are right. Not all workflows are built for graph, but yeah, we played around with it. We also played around with tools on top of that as well to see how value we can get out of it.
I just heard that there was a GraphDB natively inside Postgres kernel now. So, any comments, Dave?
Yeah, with Graph, it's kind of the same thing. Kick the tires. It really feels like for us, there's, especially whenever you talk about how things are connected within healthcare, people and claims and diagnostics and events, that we're probably at the point where we need a graph database, but maybe don't have the expertise. That's been my feeling about it.
So some of you caught my presentation. I tried to split the workflows into financial, operational, clinical, and imaging. If you can give me a quick breakdown of where your workflows run, you start from Adam and move to Taposh.
So what were the four?
Financial, operational, clinical, and imaging.
Most of ours are going to be financial and operational within our AI team.
So it's an 80-20 financial, operational, 50-50? Can you take a
We'll
wild
say
guess?
50-50, I
Okay,
think, within
all
our
right.
within
That's
our
a
team.
safe guess.
But we also have we do have an imaging team that is not. We don't really do a whole lot with our AI group, but I know they're doing a whole lot of stuff with using artificial intelligence. So within the company, it's probably an equal split among the three.
Okay. Woranat, your workflows are, you're basically sales and marketing?
Yes, right.
But do you touch any of the clinical trial stuff at all?
No.
No post-market?
No, I don't have a chance.
Okay. So pretty much,
So pretty much, I would say 80 on finance, 20 on
operational
yeah.
marketing as
we
well?
We do marketing mix, resource allocation also. So if that counts into the operation.
Yeah, I would say it does. Taposh?
Yeah, so we have an interesting split. We have a split across the board, and we do financial, operational as well. And then we have some buy-in into clinical, some aspects of clinical we touch, and then very little of imaging. We have slated more.
I've seen
work
your
for
blogs on imaging. So.
Oh, thank you.
So the question, to follow up Taposh, how would you, so you saw the flu prediction. Would that be operational or would that be clinical?
Yeah, it's
So
a
it's
it's
a
a
fuzzy
in between.
thing,
It's a fuzzy thing, right? Yeah. So it's operational in the sense that you get to scale up and down the flu clinics, right, and the staff basically. But it's clinical in the other sense.
Is Fonda here? Anybody have questions, please? There's an open forum. I want to try and keep it fun. Fonda, if you have any questions that came online. Okay, cool. Thank you. Anybody else in the interim, please raise your hand. It's late afternoon. Yes, I know. Oh, please, go ahead.
Question for the panel.
I'll repeat it, so please.
Okay. Say if you take one kind of machine learned insight that made a real impact on the business, what would it be?
So I'll repeat the question. One impact that machine learning provided to each of your organizations, if you can tell me that story.
I'd say that machine learning can crush a rule set any day.
Can you take it to the bank? I'm kidding. You can, of course. Or not? One story that really sticks out?
It depends on the stakeholder, actually. I mean,
Was there a lot of money involved for Sanofi?
right. So if you can articulate well on what you've done,
There's Somalee.
doesn't matter whether it's the tree-based model, regression, or whatsoever. If you can tell them what exactly happened and what will be happen after that, I think that's machine learning for you.
Taposh, I'm sure you have a lot of use cases that you can talk about.
Yeah, I can. I'll talk about one that I spoke before a couple of years back here on this stage itself on EDIP. That was a eye-opening use case because using machine learning, we were able to actually save lives. In that case, be able to rush somebody to the EMR faster. So that was, it cannot be counted in terms of dollars in that sense.
Welcome, Somalee. Give her a good big hand. Somalee is from Stanford Medicine, not too far from here. I know you ran a little late, but that's all right. It's this life. I actually knew Somalee from her genomics days. Somalee used to actually make genomic instrumentation, then moved on to actually studying genomics from a phenotypic perspective, and then now she's doing, from a genotypic perspective, now she's doing medical records. Somalee, can you tell a quick story of where you've seen data science and specifically machine learning along that pathway? I know all of genomics is directed acyclic graphs, by the way, so you can talk about that too if you want.
So machine learning has been around for a very long time, but it's only recently that people have seen benefits at really large scale, particularly with deep learning, imaging. There have been some results that are spectacular, which is what has gotten at least my community at Stanford really excited. So we have had for years we have had radiology data. We have about 1 petabyte of radiology data, but it's only now everybody wants it, and they're all doing analysis on it and producing really cool papers. We are also starting a journey on pathology in, when you take slides and you scan them, and those things can actually generate a huge amount of data. So we are looking at about collecting 10 petabytes of data over the next 3 years.
So I started my career in radiology, by the way, and I have actually maintained a list of the number of images worldwide for the last 20 plus years. It's actually been doubling over the last 5 years. And as Somalee rightly points, every year worldwide, there are about 20 billion images created, half of which are in the United States, by the way. So I think probably the next big jump, and I think Arno and Aaron also mentioned this, that machine learning in imaging is probably the next big footprint for capture. How big is the data science team at Stanford?
So
organization-wide. I'm sure you have a lot of researchers that publish a
my
lot
guess is organizationally, if you call like data scientists, staff engineers, they're probably about 20 to 30, but they're actually scattered. So, my unit, for example, we are mostly infrastructure people collaborating with labs. But if you look at labs, there are thousands.
So cheap grad students, right? I'm kidding. We all have been there before. So, I'll ask some audience questions here. So there was an audience question. Anybody else questions before I take one, please?
So is a data science PhD person?
Good question. So I'll repeat the question. Is a data science a PhD person or somebody with experience that actually can juggle data better? You can start with Adam there. Adam, do you have a PhD?
I do have a PhD, but I would never. Whenever I'm reviewing resumes, looking at character lengths of title, on the name is not a thing for me. We have a few team members that have gone through data science boot camps, and frankly have been paired with a little bit of a software background, have been our strongest supporters on our team. So when you're going through either trying to get into the market or if you're on the hiring side, a data science boot camp or having, and it's pretty easy to tease out as you talk to people, even on the phone. A PhD is not really a thing to me, at least, and in particular, mine's in biomedical engineering, and I would trust somebody with physics or political science. I don't think it matters.
By the way, I'm a bioengineer too, so FYI. Woranat, so they came from the IT organization within Sanofi, trained with data science, or you actually had fresh crop folks in your team?
I can't say for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean,
within your small sphere,
okay,
what does it look like?
So in my team, it's more on PhD people.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to say that.
No, I understand. Sanofi is a big organization. So.
But again, these people tend to love to code.
Sure.
And like to experiment things on the data. So once you guys have some new techniques, we talk about it, we try it, and then we share the result on it. So, when you talk to people, exactly like they have done it before or not.
Thank you. So let me take some audience questions here. So let me start with Somalee. Can you comment on the data lake that exists within Stanford? Raw textual data or images as well, or unstructured?
So right now it's unstructured data and structured data.
Oh, both,
so
okay.
These are both exist, and we are pulling in actively the PACS data as we speak. And
both the header and the raw image as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, and it's expanding to genomics and pathology next year.
So genomics, pathology, they're all unstructured data sets. Taposh, you want to take that?
The data.
So what kind of data lake do you have? Is it just textual,
so
structured?
It is textual, structured, and semi-structured data right now, and we have plans to get into other types of data soon.
I actually know for a fact that Kaiser also has a very large data lake for imaging, so but they've not used it on the data science piece yet.
There has been some work.
Some small work, yeah. Okay. So very good question. How do you treat sparse data differently from dense data? Do you want to start, Taposh?
Sure. So sparse data has a different challenge altogether because the way you evaluate the sparse data is a little different in my mind, at least from the dense data, because of the fact that the outcome variable having a positive to it or whatever you want to construe is across a different time frame or a different length of things. So we use different metrics, but as healthcare, we need to overall look into a variety of different metrics. So I would look at, in addition to just regular AUC, like PR curves and stuff like that, whenever I'm dealing with sparse data, put more attention to it in general.
You use a lot of GBMs and XGBoosts. Is that why GBM works better, because the data is generally sparse?
I mean, it depends on the data set as well, a lot of time, in my point of view again. But yeah, GBM has been and XGBoost has been pretty good up till now.
Any comments, Woranat? You shook your head.
No, I was actually thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think 3 models work really well with sparse data. And again, if you use like linear model like regression, it's not going to work, in my perspective.
No, that's
I'm sorry.
fine. I mean, yeah.
So
What do you think works?
GBM works well out of the box.
Okay.
XGBoost, probably you need some more tuning on it. That's my experience.
There was not a tuning question, but maybe our drinks will have a tuning question. Adam, you want to?
I was just going to say, what is an embedding layer? I'm not sure if my team's quizzing me or not, but it seems like it.
Maybe they are. They're heckling you. Okay, we have time for one more question. What is your strategy to feed model predictions into the workflow to impact change? You want to try and take that, Somalee, or do you want to? Either one workflow or one model has some output data. You feed it into something else. How does it actually change the process? I think Aaron talked a whole lot about stacked ensembles here, and so you want to comment?
No, I'm actually not sure. But
Not
what
sure
we
what the question is.
definitely do is we take predictions, and then that people, when they develop models, let's say researcher develops model, we try to implement that within the hospital ecosystem to see
so
if that
on a
makes
production
a difference.
scale.
Exactly.
Okay, and then learn from that.
Exactly, because nothing is ever like I'm done, right? It's always an evolving scenario.
That's actually a side question. Taposh, you want to take that quickly before we?
This one, how do you feedback model?
Oh, either one.
Oh,
You want to read that again?
okay.
What is your strategy to feed model predictions back into the workflow to impact change on either a production scale or a research scale? You can.
I mean,
answer
definitely from a research scale, definitely it totally makes sense. Even on the production scale, it makes sense because I mean, at the end of the day, when you are evaluating something, the real-time results, when you expose it to scoring scenario, you get the feedback right away, and you need to put that feedback back into the data set, and that actually will tell you whether your model is drifting or not.
So I'll kind of ask that question a different way. What do you report to your management team that your project has succeeded? Do you actually change your scores into some sort of money number, or I'm curious.
It depends on the project and it depends on the problem that you're trying to solve, in my point of view.
Always a money number, right? At some point.
Adam, do you want to?
No, completely. I mean, our strategy for whenever we
How do you know the project has succeeded? Just a
so
simple
we
question.
have, I mean, ideally we have some kind of baseline of whatever decisioning was being done before, whatever the baseline, decision of the workflow, before, and then kind of twofold, you can apply your model kind of in a theoretical sense to understand what the lift is if you applied some model to some decision that you were making. And then, you can either do kind of simulated retrospective reviews of running, maybe a month's worth of data through your new, kind of the new system that, decisioning that's in place, or kind of run it in background mode to see, A/B testing, what is the baseline for a month or 2 weeks or whatever it looks like, and what is it with our kind of system in place, and be able to just do that direct. I mean, everything has to be data-driven in our decisioning.
I think Sri talked about a data-driven startup as well. So
Yeah, completely, and not even just in terms of how we're, we don't necessarily want models to go back to be able to go into, human interpretation. So yeah.
I think they've shut the mics off, which means we're done here. Thank you very much, guys. Thank our panelists, and I hope this was fun for you guys. Thank you very much.